the interface. Yeah, there we go. Makes more sense, don't it? All right. Oh, welcome to the stream. Okay, we're not gonna have like 47 problems like we did last week. So, um, yes, I am here. Now, here's my question for I guess the beginning of the stream. So I got two completely different types of microphones right now. Um, I wanted to check which one was better, which one sounded better. So I have this microphone set to like 75% volume, right? All the settings are basically exactly the same for both. So I have this microphone and this blue one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the one that's on all the way down, which is the blue one, and I'm going to turn the other one to the same exact volume and tell me which one sounds better. So, in 3, 2, 1. Alright, this is the other microphone. This one here. Yeah, the M7. Does it sound better or worse? Or the same? Or louder? Or softer? I don't know, what y'all think. So, this is the gray microphone. This is the blue microphone. Blue or gray? Let me know. Meanwhile, I'm going to check it myself. Because I cannot hear. So that one is more louder but picks up more background noise. My vote gray. Gray. Gray microphone. I figured it was. The blue one, I don't think it has any sort of noise cancellation feature or like. I think it's an omnidirectional microphone as opposed to the gray one, which is like a directional. It faces forward. So, okay. Good to know. In that case, let me unplug this one. Hello? Hello, hello, hello? Okay, that was my question. I wasn't sure which one of these was working properly, honestly. Or I wasn't sure which one was like properly connected, I should say. Um, which which one was connected to which, I should say. Because I got like. Okay, so it was the second one. All right, so I assume you didn't hear anything, uh, any of the stuff I said before I unplugged the mic, or after I unplugged the mic. Gotcha. All right, so to reiterate, um, number one rule of the stream: we don't talk about any of the events that transpired yesterday. We all know, right? Um, I got plenty. We got plenty of people who watch me who are from both sides of the aisle, right? So we don't talk about that. Um, keep the subject primarily on what we're talking about today, which is Nintendo Switch. All right. With that being said, uh, we got some interesting topics today. Um, specifically, again, about the Nintendo Switch 2 and the rumors, I guess, circling around that. Uh, which, ironically, even though I said we're not talking about the events that transpired yesterday, uh, there was sort of a, I guess, event that transpired yesterday that sort of coincides with what we're talking about and sort of gave me the idea of what to make this whole stream about. By the way, going forward, I don't know, not sure if everyone, how many of y'all saw my message in the Discord chat, in the No Rules chat, but going forward, I do plan for Wednesday night, a much earlier than now. But going forward, like probably around 7 p.m. Yeah, yeah. Probably more around 7 p.m. next week. But my plan going forward is for Wednesday to be the TactiCast day. And so let me go ahead and pull up my sort of sequence that I had mapped out for this. I have Saturday off from work this, so this works out awesomely. Saturday off. Oh yeah. For yeah. Okay, so you did see the whole like sort of list plan there. Okay, so Sunday is when I will have a sort of topic revealed that will be basically what the topic of discussion will be for TactiCast on Wednesday. So in that meantime, that's when I'll be sort of uh, researching articles and stuff like that. And that will also be the time where you can also, you as in the members of Discord, can also input their own articles and stuff, whatever they find, and we could sort of, I don't know, make it sort of a community aspect, right? Um, then, so between Sunday and Wednesday each week, that's when you'll be able to do that. Uh, no, I know it's Wednesday. On Tuesday, that's when I will generally, t- yeah, on Tuesday, that's when I'll actually put the stream event page up so y'all know a whole day ahead of time what time the stream's going to happen instead of like an hour ahead of time. So, yeah, that'll make it easier to know. And then Wednesdays is when I'll actually go live for TactiCast. And yes, I do know it's Wednesday. That's why I'm streaming on Wednesday. Um, and then on Friday, Thursday is just kind of like an off day, right? But Friday, I'll be like essentially taking one like small, I guess, individual topic that I talked about during the stream and cutting that up and making it into one individual video, which I'll be uploading on Friday. Um, I guess for the algorithm, right? But and then on Saturday, we'll try to do a like a gaming stream night. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, I can do that. But yes, until further notice, that's what I hope the schedule will be. So yeah. Anyway, with that being said, because I literally just came up with these ideas today, y'all had no idea until today. Yeah, again, plans change and stuff. It's all understandable. Exactly. Um, I did. What did I say? I said something about like until further notice. Yeah, yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, yeah. So just because last week it was on Wednesday, so and I figured, well, I guess I'll just make it every Wednesday. Also, give me just a second. I will be right back. I guess I can do. No. And we're back. Okay. Nothing changed except the one thing that changed, which is me turning the light on. Which hopefully, I don't know, made the frame rate a little better. That tends to happen with this particular camera. Is when I turn the light on, the frame rate runs a little better. I really want to do a Smash Ultimate Night sometimes. I mean, we could do that on Saturday. I'll have to figure out what. Um, I kind of want to switch it up like every Saturday we do a like a game night stream. So or like do maybe two games a stream so that I get sort of multiple audiences. But anyway, let's do this. There we go. Actually, no. Let's do that. All right. So, now for the main reason we're here. There's a lot of stuff going around about the new Nintendo console that's supposed to come out sometime around next year. I haven't gotten Splatoon 3 yet. Kind of thinking about getting a used copy of Fire Emblem Three Houses. That's not a bad choice. I haven't played Three Houses in a little while, but I do plan on getting back to it. I've been still kind of grinding through Astral Chain. Um, Astral Chain is I don't know. It's getting kind of addicting for me right now. I'll be honest. When I play it anyway. It's also hard to. What I'm noticing is it's hard to play it for like long sessions without it sort of hurting my eyes because of just how like red and blue the game is. I don't know what it is about the game, but it's just a lot of red and a lot of blue in the game. And I think the art style they go with, the cel shaded art style, kind of makes it even more vibrant with the red and blue color palettes. But also, they have like no points in the game where you can like save the game. The only time the game saves, from what I've noticed, the only time the game saves is after like a main chapter, and then once you're in the main hub, you can actually save there. But when you're out in the actual levels, so to speak, do you think they'll ever also welcome Max? I don't know if I've seen you in here before, but whatever. Regardless of that, thank you for joining. Looks like we have quite a few viewers in here today. 5 already. I'll be honest, I never get this many viewers this early, so that's cool. Well, 6 if you count Twitch, which that's cool. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about the Nintendo Switch rumors. So yesterday there was some big news, massive news, tremendous news, huge news, right? Big news, tremendous news, massive news. And it's news that got swept under the rug because Nintendo was freaking stupid. Nintendo, whose idea was this? I'm gonna go ahead and swap it over to like what we're talking about today. At least the first topic of the day, because you know the geniuses at Nintendo thought it was like the greatest idea to drop this on a day where literally no one's going to be paying attention to it because everyone's paying attention to something else that's happening that is a little more grandiose, I would say. But we're not here to talk about that, and I don't want to see any comments about that, right? All right, keep it to a minimum of 0. But yeah. So Nintendo. Okay, first of all, this statement that Nintendo put out. There's actually a lot more weight to this statement than people put out. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and read it. Apparently, Shintaro Furukawa, who is the current president of Nintendo company, I guess. Okay, so we sent this out at 7:30 p.m. last night. It says this, and I'm assuming this is broken translation because it was. I can't get enough of corporate management policy briefings. Okay. Again, this is. I'm assuming this is broken English because the original tweet was sent out in Japanese, so there may be some context missing. But anyway, says this is for Furukawa at today's corporate management policy briefing. Yeah. We announced that Nintendo Switch software will also be playable on the successor to the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the successor to the Nintendo Switch as well. Further information about the successor to Nintendo Switch, including its compatibility with the Nintendo Switch, will be announced at a later date. Dang, freaking Shintaro, how many times did you have to say Nintendo Switch in that statement for, first of all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in 6 lines. Yeah, wow. Okay. First massive statement. First point about the statement, right? I think this is the first time, and I don't think anyone's talking about this. This is the first time that Nintendo has confirmed that the next system will be a Nintendo Switch. Right? Everyone is suspecting that it'll be a Nintendo Switch, right? But all of the speculations have just been that speculations, rumors. No one has actually been able to confirm that it's actually going to be a Nintendo Switch-like system. Until this statement right here, where if the all the Nintendo Switch games we have currently work on the new system, then they would have to work with the Nintendo Switch sort of functionality, right? With the Joy-Cons and that. And if that's the case, then it's a Nintendo Switch, right? I mean, we all knew it was going to be a Nintendo Switch, probably, right? Like a Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever they're going to call it eventually. But no one actually had concrete evidence that it was going to be a Nintendo Switch, right? But now we do. President of Nintendo of Japan is confirming it just by saying that it's going to be backwards compatible. Because that's another thing. If it's backwards compatible, that means it's also using cartridges. So no disc-based system. I didn't think anyone thought it was going to be a disc-based system. So we're going to be using cartridges. I think, yeah, this is the first official confirmation, right? I think. Can we get a confirmation if this is the first time it's been uttered that it will be a cartridge-based system? Yeah, the cartridges will taste even worse this time around, probably. Which, by the way, I don't know why people are tasting Nintendo Switch cartridges. It sounds a lot like Wii U. Well, don't get carried away though. We'll be getting back to that and why I think what I think will be the most important thing for Nintendo Switch uh, successors success. All right. So, I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone. Um, Pretty much, if we're looking at the Nintendo Switch as a handheld system, every handheld system has been backwards compatible to the prior one, except the Nintendo Switch, right? So we had the Game Boy, and then we had the Game Boy Color, which was backwards compatible with the original Game Boy. The Game Boy Advance was backwards compatible to the Game Boy in color. Then the DS was backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance. The 3DS was backwards compatible with the regular DS, right? And then the Switch comes out, and it's not backwards compatible with the DS or the 3DS or whatever. So ever since the GameCube, I think, the Switch is the first Nintendo system to not be backwards compatible. Or, yeah. But now the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. So, uh, that's a good sign. Or whatever the Nintendo Switch successor will be, right? Um, and I think with because I'll go ahead and I'll actually interject a point about that you're bringing up with the Wii U, right? One of the issues, and I don't think anyone really thinks about this with the Wii U, right? One of the issues with the Wii U selling, I think, um, obviously there's a laundry list of reasons the Wii U was their worst selling system of all time. But I think one that no one really thinks about that I literally just thought of now because actually it makes sense. The Wii didn't really have the original Wii. I mean, it had killer apps, right? It had, it had your Mario's, your big Mario, your big Zelda, and your big, I don't know, what else? What else? Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, right? It had all the like kind of core big titles that you want on your Nintendo system. Metroid. Um, but third party games didn't really have a lot of that, did it? Right? It had, I guess, uh, like tentpole big third party games that had a lot of shovelware on there. That's that's one of the reasons Louis was so successful because it was such a successful system that all these third party companies just could just put shit on the Wii and it would sell. It was one of the few times where they could literally throw shit at the wall and it would stick all the time, just because um, everyone had the Wii and every company that put something on the Wii probably sold at least maybe a few $1 million worth of um, whatever software they put on it. So, but what the problem with that is because there was no good third party software on the Wii. When the Wii U came out, um, the Wii U was backwards compatible, but I don't think anyone who got the Wii U wanted to get the Wii U for backwards compatibility, right? Um, that was one of the, in my opinion, that was one of the really cool things about like the DS, right? Going from the Game Boy to the DS, was that it was backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance, right? You could play all of the, you know, hundreds of great games from the Game Boy Advance on your DS, and the DS eventually had hundreds of great titles on it too, which transferred over to the 3DS. And I think the great titles that were on the DS is what sort of carried the 3DS up until the point where it was able to get its own good library of games, right? Um, and I think that might have been one of the a minor setback, like a minor thing about the Wii U in comparison to all the other just laundry list of problems with the Wii U. That might have been one of them that people don't really think about a lot. Is that there was nothing from the Wii that could have carried the Wii U until it had good games. Because I'm trying to think, when the Wii U came out, they didn't have any like big games. I think all they had was like Nintendo Land and maybe I don't know. Did Super Mario, the new Super Mario Bros. U come out launch day? I don't remember. I remember it having a horrible launch lineup too, uh, in the sense that it didn't have any like system seller games like the Switch did, for example, with The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Um, the Wii technically had a system seller. People wanted the Wii because they wanted to play Wii Sports, at least when it first came out. Because there wasn't really a game like that at the time, and then people got tired of it very quickly. But technically, it was a system seller, and also it came with every system, so it just automatically sold when you bought the Wii. But anyway, um, anyway, let's. I guess I'm trying to think if there's anything else to add on this particular point before we get into the next thing. Because there's a. Oh, I guess this kind of falls into what we're talking about. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, I found out about this like a couple weeks ago actually, but since I'm sort of making this as a stream that kind of an all encompassing stream about the sort of discussion around the Nintendo Switch 2, I'll go ahead and talk about this here. We have the first official title, sort of, for the Nintendo Switch, right? Um, and it's not a first party Nintendo title. It is this one right here. So, a little bit of an interesting thing that's happening right here. I'm going to pull up just the image. If you look at this image, what do you see? So this is Ukulele. It was the sort of spiritual successor to Banjo and Kazooie. Um, from the Nintendo 64, they remade it for the newer systems at the time. I guess they're remaking it for the updated console, so they're remaking it for the Xbox Series X/S, right? They're remaking it for the PS5. They're remaking it for PC, which I could have sworn the original is already on PC anyway, so they're just remaking it on the PC again. Okay. And here's something interesting. They're remaking it for Nintendo. The Nintendo what? Nintendo Switch is on the market right now. Could they not just put Nintendo Switch on there? Unless, really the only reason they wouldn't be putting the Nintendo Switch on there is if there is another system that's coming that will not be called the Nintendo Switch. Right? Or at least won't only be called the Nintendo Switch. So, and I think this was like a week ago when I saw this. Maybe last Monday. I just sort of wanted to bring this up along with the point that it's the sort of backwards compatible thing and all that. Just I think it falls in line with that sort of topic. But yeah, so first first game that we know is coming to, because here's the thing. The original ukulele game is already on the Nintendo Switch, so why would they want to remake the game for a console that it's already on? You know? And I mean, it's not like that's the first time that's happened either, to be honest. They they remake plenty of games that are like already on the system they're on, but those are usually packages like definitive editions or like stuff that like it contains all the DLC or something. But no one, you don't really consider that like a whole new game, right? Or a whole new a remake per se. It's not really a remake when they do that. But this is a remake, so I'm assuming they like update the graphics or something like that. Maybe make the controls a little better, um, sound design, add music or something like that. Um, and it's made by the original team that made Banjo Kazooie. So we got Grant Kirkhope making the music. Hooray! Uh, but yeah, so obviously I don't know. I don't think it's a secret at all. I think it's a mistake for Playtonic to put Nintendo and not Nintendo Switch on here. But if it's not coming to the Nintendo Switch, but it's coming to Nintendo, um, then the only thing it could be coming to is the next console. So yeah. Anyway, I think we're done with this topic. So yeah, we know about that. Um, I don't know why I had this here. Oh, one thing I did want to talk about, and we're I guess I'll talk about this now and before we get into like what I kind of want to see from the new Nintendo Switch console. But before we do that, I guess we'll talk about Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. Mainly because, no, I'm not going to do a whole stream on this game because we did that last stream. But the important thing about this is my original hope for Xenoblade X Definitive Edition was that they would delay it for the next Nintendo Switch console. The reason I wanted them to do that is so they could actually spend a a lot of time, spend more time making the game actually look better than it did on the Wii U, right? Originally on the Wii U. With them bringing it to the Nintendo Switch, the Switch is it's there are things about the Switch that are more powerful than the Wii U, but then there's things on the Wii U about the Wii U that are um, that make it difficult to make Switch games l- better than they were on the Wii U in certain aspects. But the thing is, the Switch is not so much more powerful than the Wii U that a game like Xenoblade X will look that much better, right? It's not as massive a leap as the original Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii was when they ported it to Definitive Edition. That game on Switch looks, you know, 10 times, 20 times better than it did on the Wii. Um, but X doesn't look that much better. Now, the reason I bring this up is because if they are bringing X to the current Switch and not to the new Switch, um, one, I think this means this is their like Hail Mary for one of their like Hail Marys for the current Switch, as far as like their last one of their last big titles that are going to be coming out. Because like if we think about it, what's really coming out now that hasn't already come out? I think I think there's only like a couple big titles that are still coming out. Um, I think I don't even, do we even know if Metroid Prime 4 is like confirmed to be just a Nintendo Switch game? And I guess what is it? Pokemon Legends. Pokemon Legends. There's probably another one that I'm not thinking of. But there's only a few games that are like still scheduled to come out for the current Switch. And a lot of those are suspected to be also coming out on the Switch too. So with this being sort of their last Hail Mary attempt, I think originally I wanted them to remake it for the Switch too, but now that I think about it, I think it's actually a good thing they did this because that means that the Switch 2 is probably most definitely going to be a lot more powerful than the current Switch, which I guess it's a concern for some people. A lot of people who, um, would like Nintendo to finally have a console that's like on par with, in terms of power, with the Xbox and PlayStation, you know, consoles. Um, with them not look if they were to port X Definitive Edition to the Switch 2 and it still looks like this, then that would be a horrible sign for the Switch 2. Just laying it out there. As far as a horrible sign for what you would expect from the Nintendo Switch console. But with them porting it to the current Switch, that means the new system has to be so much more powerful than what you see on X, on Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, which makes me optimistic about the system. Um, Now, what the, I guess, how much more powerful that will be remains to be seen. All we have related to Nintendo Switch Power in comparison to its competitors is just rumors. And we've had varying, um, just within the past 2 months or so, we've had many varying, um, I guess, accounts, uh, and yeah, many varying accounts on what the specs of the Switch may or may not be, and some of them seem credible, and some of them seem not so credible. But nothing has been sort of concrete and confirmed. And I don't think, honestly, I don't think we will see anything, or we won't really know anything 100% until the Switch is on the Nintendo Switch Successors on store shelves. And people are buying it and people are cracking it open and see what's inside. Because even when the original Switch came out, we sort of had an idea of what was in it, but we didn't really see what was in it until people actually got the system. Because for a while, Nintendo was like talking about, oh, it's a Tegra X1, but it's like a slightly modified Tegra X1, specialized Tegra X1 chip that'll be specifically to the Nintendo Switch. And then they ended up cracking the thing open, and it was just a straight up Tegra X1. There wasn't anything special about it. Nothing was special about it. And then they crack open the Joy Cons, and we all know, most of us know, sort of what was happening to it. Now, that's not to say that the original Switch wasn't a cool system. Even at the time, it was I love the Nintendo Switch. In my opinion, best. I would say at this point, I think it's my favorite uh, game system of all time. Uh, Overall, I think there are certain specific things that I like about previous other just game systems in general. But I think overall, Nintendo Switch is probably now my favorite system of all time. And considering the library on it, uh, the library of games just for it, just for the standalone console, I think I can safely say that. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna shift sort of gears here and talk about what one of the sort of rumors that I don't know how substantial this rumor is, but I think it would probably be the best choice for the Switch. And honestly, it seemed like something that would have been the most realistic idea as far as like if we were to get just a straight up Nintendo Switch 2, what would it look like? What would we see? And I don't think this is a real sort of rumor or whatever. But the PC Mag, I think was it PC Mag that came up with this? This was like in September, yeah, kind of mid September, where I came across this. And I actually came across this thanks to RGT85, which we may be watching in an RGT85 video later. Because he has a little topic that I kind of want to comment on. But we won't watch the whole thing, but we'll sort of skim through some of the points because we may be talking about some of that. But uh, there are a few things like in this article that I think if Nintendo went in this direction, it would probably be I don't know. I think it would be a quality of good enough of like a quality of life improvement with the Switch. Now, one of the things I do remember with this is that in this article, first of all of these images are like 3D printed. They're either 3D printed or 3D model computer generated images, right? None of these are like substantial concrete images of whatever system these are supposed to be. If it's a Nintendo Switch successor or some Chinese knockoff Switch, it doesn't matter for just this conversation we're having. Just some of the ideas I've seen in this, I think would be a natural upgrade to the Switch. I think one of the things that talked about here um, involved the size of the Switch. This particular render here. Um, Again, this is sort of old news. It's a month old, but considering this is the one of the only couple times that I've streamed or done a podcast sort of stream, I figured I'd compile this all into one video slash stream. Um, Essentially, well, first of all, there's no way this is a real system. First, first thing I notice, right? If you can see my mouse, I know it's kind of tiny. Let me see if I can zoom in. Maybe. There we go. You can see my mouse a little better. First problem right off the bat. These these shoulder buttons are way too wide. Uh, Now, what I will say before anything is that at least in this quote rumor of Nintendo Switch 2. They're talking about an 8-inch screen, which, for those who are, I don't know, don't have a tape measure on hand or doesn't really think about how big the system was originally, the base Nintendo Switch, not the OLED, but just the base Nintendo Switch, from what I remember, it's a 6.5 inch screen, I believe, and the Switch OLED is a 7-inch screen. Both systems are the same size, but the obviously the base Nintendo Switch has a wider like bezel around, whereas the OLED much thinner bezel, so the screen sort of covers the whole system, right? With an 8-inch screen, you're looking at probably, I would say, this much more console. This much more of a screen. An 8-inch screen would be a massive system. A big upgrade. Like it would be the size of like an iPad. Maybe not that big, but very, very close. In fact, I would say if the next Switch were to be an 8-inch screen, it would be probably the size of the Wii U gamepad altogether. Which may or may not be a good thing. I don't know. Actually, honestly, y'all can't see it here, but it would probably be around the size of this little touchscreen I got for my computer. But I actually think that would be the most obvious thing for Nintendo to do to convey that it is a new system is just to make it big. Make it much bigger. Bigger, better, right? It's a bigger system, it's a better system. I think you could only really do that with a system like the Switch, where it's a screen, right? It's a tablet. It's not like the 3DS versus the 3DS XL, right? Where it's the same system, just bigger. I think in this particular case, I don't know. I think it would make it to the normie, to the consumer who is not in the loop of what's going on with the Nintendo consoles and all the news and stuff. When they're walking into a GameStop and they see a Nintendo Switch and then they see this big, much larger looking Nintendo Switch, they're going to ask the counter and be like, "Hey, what's that?" And they're going to be like, "Oh, that's the new and improved console from Nintendo." They're not going to be like, "Oh, it's just an upgrade to the Wii like they did with the Wii U," right? No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be like, no. They walk into a GameStop, they see this giant Switch. It's not a small Switch, it's a big Switch, right? And then that'll pique interest. Again, it won't be like the Wii U. Now, the rest of this, I'm not sort of interested as far as this particular picture. It's essentially the same thing as the base Switch as far as you got the plus, minus buttons, you got the analog sticks. Hopefully these analog sticks will be improved and not prone to analog stick drift, which the base Switch Joy-Cons are. Interestingly enough, we have capture buttons on both sides of the Joy-Con. I don't quite know what the point of that is for. The only thing I could possibly think of is if you are playing a game with the Joy-Con held sideways and you want to screenshot no matter which Joy-Con you're using, that could make sense. But in that case too, why not just put, because the circle, right, this circle button right here, If that's the case, so my bad. So these two, there's a capture button on this side and there's a capture button on that side. Both of the square little buttons. Um, if they're gonna have a capture button on both Joy-Cons, then why not also have a home button on both Joy-Cons? You know, I don't think it makes sense to just have two capture buttons on both sides and not two home buttons. Because also, what if you're holding the Joy-Con that doesn't have the home button and you need to press the home button for whatever reason? Makes sense to me. So again, that's why I think this is not uh uh it's not a proper image. There may be something to this because now that we have it confirmed that it is a Nintendo Switch that's coming out, um, this is probably the uh, I don't know, most likely of all the sort of visualizations that we have of a Switch 2 that we've seen so far. Um, but again, I still don't think this is what it's going to look like. Again, look for an 8-inch screen. These shoulder buttons are massive. If we scroll down to some of the, I don't know what the point of these are for. I don't. This looks like a completely different. Nintendo supports older games in its own inconsistent way. Credit. Okay, I don't know what the point of this is. I mean, we all know that they have a little bit of their issue with putting their sort of legacy titles on the Switch. Um, but anyway, what I will say is that what we're seeing in sort of this article as well is how sort of I think these are ballpark specs. They're not of all the things we're seeing here, I think the specs are the least accurate. Like if we know it's going to be a Switch 2, then it's going to look something like this no matter what, right? What we don't know is what the specs will look like because we don't have concrete evidence. But if this is the most accurate we're seeing, as far as what the fact that it'll look like a Switch and be a more powerful Switch, then I'll take these with a grain of salt. But we'll say, okay, 12 gigs of RAM for the Switch. I think, what does the Switch have currently? Like 4? Extremely high jump. You'll be able to do a ton of things with 12 gigs of RAM on a handheld console. Great. 256 gigabytes of storage. I think that should have been a day one thing for the Nintendo Switch, the current Nintendo Switch. That way we wouldn't have had to go out and buy 256 gigabyte SD cards, or we just could have had 512 by having 256 on board and then getting another 256 SD card. But no, we had to go buy a separate SD card because, you know, Nintendo Switch games. Luckily, Nintendo, at least their first party titles, they are good at compressing their games to where they don't take up nearly as much space as they might have taken up on other systems. But one third party game will completely just make your Nintendo Switch onboard storage completely irrelevant. Now, yeah, we do have the 8-inch screen. There was something about, okay, ARM Cortex A7 8AE processor with 8 cores, chip, mobile, auto installations. That won't surprise me if they end up having like another sort of mobile style chip where it's like what people were thinking before is they would just use the Tegra X2, but for what it looks like here, they're going to go with something way more modernized than just the Tegra X2. Uh, what people were hoping they would do is just put the Tegra X2 on the Switch OLED, and they didn't do that. And I think the ship has sailed on the Tegra X2. I think they're going to go with something like what you see in the Valve Steam Deck, right? Where it may even be on par with that to the point where we may be able to see some, maybe not solid 4K graphics, but we will be able to see at least 1440p in some of the smaller titles and solid 1080p 60 frames per second on every game coming to the Switch too. I don't think there is an excuse at this point in the game for Nintendo to not have 1080p 60 frames per second for every game. Most games on the Switch are already running at 1080p, right? With exceptions, I think Breath of the Wild runs at 900 on the Switch. And I don't know all the exceptions, obviously. But I think Splatoon 2 and maybe 3 had dynamic resolution where it would scale down based on what's happening to keep the 60 frame rate, 60 frames per second up to 60 the whole time. They scaled down the resolution so that they could match that. And there were some other games where they had a frame or like a performance mode and a graphics mode where you could choose to have 60 frames per second with 720p or 30 frames per second for 1080p. But that was a thing you could choose to do. Nintendo Switch 2 should be able to do 1080 60 for most things. I think what we might see is if the Switch 2 comes out, I think one of the launch titles could possibly be Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Now, to my understanding, I don't know if there's any DLC that came out with Tears of the Kingdom. There was DLC that came out with Breath of the Wild, but I didn't hear anything about Tears of the Kingdom. If there was, it flew by the radar. We're already a year and a half removed from that. I think the ship has to have sailed already with DLC. But what they may do is port it as a launch title. It's probably, I would say it's if the Switch 2 has similar enough architecture that as the original Switch, it should be able to port over with little to no issues, right? So in that case, they just bring it over and turn up the graphic fidelity to about as max as you can get it. And I think if they were to do that, I believe that could be the best way to tech demo the system, right? If they can get Tears of the Kingdom running at 1080p 60 frames per second the whole time, I think that would be a perfect tech demo. Because everyone at this point knows of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's one of the best-selling games in the system, right? And people knew, and people that were in the loop at the time, right, knew it was coming out for the Wii U as well. In fact, it was originally planned for the Wii U before the Switch U was even a concept. But I think there were things that were sort of not there were things that the Switch couldn't quite handle at full power just from Breath of the Wild alone, right? Uh, Case in point, the area in Breath of the Wild, the Kokiri Forest, right, or something like that. I think it was called the Kokiri Forest in Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. As soon as you walked into that forest, the frame rate dropped to like 15 frames per second, and I would assume with Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, I doubt it's probably much different, right? If a similar location exists, again, I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, but considering it is a game that takes place in the same sort of timeline, but in the future, right? Then a similar location exists, and if it does, then I would also assume that it does the same thing to your Switch as far as frame rate drops in that game as well. And I think if they can get a port to work flawless or as seamless as possible to where there's no frame rate drops and you get it running at 60 frames per second 1080p out the gate, launch title in the system, then there'll be no question that this is a beast of a system and it can run this massive open world game with no problems, and it's Zelda. I think that could be your sort of kickoff system seller. And then people are also speculating that we'll see again Metroid Prime 4, which I think will also be maybe not a system seller because Metroid games just don't sell as well as people would hope. But with it being a launch title, maybe. Who knows? Honestly, I think if they make it a launch title for the new system, I think we could see it selling well. I don't know. And then people are also speculating that Pokemon Legends AZ might also be a launch title for the Switch too. And if that's the case, that will be a system seller because it's Pokemon and it's an open world Pokemon game, right? And I think regardless if it's a good game or not, it's going to sell system. And I think that's going to be a major player in the takeoff of the Nintendo Switch 2. Question is, I do think they are releasing the game on the current Switch 2, or like the regular Nintendo Switch. So I don't know how much of a setback that's going to be for the new Switch if they make it a simultaneous release. But on that note, I think I've said kind of what I wanted to say about sort of specs and stuff, because I think at this point DLSS I did hear about that when I first sort of encountered this article in here. 12 gigs of RAM, 256 storage. It has been confirmed it will be backwards compatible, so there's that. And if Nintendo Switch Online is on it, then that means we'll get the legacy titles, Game Boy, Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, 64, etc. Right? There may be the appearance of GameCube games. That will be interesting. I don't think the regular Switch, I don't think we'll ever see GameCube games showing up on the regular Switch. However, we may see them on the Switch 2. If the Switch 2 is powerful enough, I think it could potentially handle GameCube games. And if that's the case, that will be a big incentive for a lot of people to get a Nintendo Switch 2. Big incentive. And I think, in particular, I think that would bring a lot of people uh, who may have wanted. Because outside of the Wii U, the GameCube was actually their second worst selling system. If you don't count the Virtual Boy, the worst selling system was the Wii U. The second worst was the GameCube. Um, but people look back more fondly on the GameCube era than they do the Wii U. Even if they may or may not have experienced games on the GameCube, when people think of like the eras of gaming, people will often quote like the PS1 and 64 era, right? You count you count those systems all together, right? You don't just say PS1 era, you say the Nintendo 64 eras. That was all kind of an encompassing thing. You say Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis era, right? GameCube, Xbox, PlayStation 2 era. That was an era. GameCube was a big player in that era. I would even say the Wii, though it was sort of already sort of branching off into its own path, people sort of considered the Wii, Xbox, and 360 in its own era, but that's when people started not counting the Wii, the Nintendo, as part of their era. Then the Wii U, nobody looks at the Wii U as its like own era, along with like the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, in my opinion. But the GameCube, I think, was one of those systems where people probably look back on it now. People who like had the original PlayStation 2 and the Xbox at the time, but maybe didn't have the GameCube, are looking back on that now. And they probably have a Switch now, right? They look back on that and think, well, maybe if only we got a GameCube at that time, we could have seen some of the good ideas they had at the time that they never really took off because the GameCube just didn't sell as much. So the games on the GameCube also didn't sell as much, right? So, with the rumor of GameCube games coming to Nintendo Switch Online, possibly only coming to the Switch 2 and not the Switch 1, I think that would be a major selling point for the Switch 2. Now, oh yeah, the article also talks about people are thinking that a solid